is that typically deliveries get lost because at the moment of delivery, the shopkeeper may not be able to pay for this. Then the shopkeeper, in the meantime, so between placing the order and receiving the cash, also has a consumers visiting the store. So these consumers, they will generate additional cash for the shopkeeper that somehow needs to be taken into account in this projection that the shopkeeper needs to make in terms of planning his cash flow. You notice that I stress a lot the cash flow. So I look at these shopkeepers as in fact managing their cash flow. So they have a limited cash flow, which they try to spread across these different suppliers that are visiting them, because it is not just one supplier, but there are multiple suppliers that actually visiting the store at particular moments in time. So if you look at this, actually the management and the decisions that these shopkeepers are facing are actually quite complex. This is not a trivial thing to operate a store like this. And I think this is also very often underestimated. But I believe these shopkeepers, they're smart. They're smart in running their business, managing their cash, also oftentimes giving out informal credit to consumers. So managing this entire operation. And they do this in a very challenging environment. So the challenging environment means there's limited space. The neighborhoods, they may sometimes not be very safe where they're operating. And they also may not have always the right facilities to store the products. And the environment is also challenging in terms of its actual logistics and deliveries, right? So this is just actually a relatively residential neighborhood in Mexico City, where you see over here, there's this particular corner store here. And you see already for this store at this point in time, there are 4 delivery trucks parked, doing deliveries to this store just at a random moment in time. So this already shows that the logistics and the operation of this logistics is quite challenging, because this results in waiting times, it results in coordination problems around this store. Now, today I'll focus on 2 things. One is around the fintech solutions, payment digitization, order-based trade credit, and the other one is on digital services in the store. And as I said, I'm happy to take any further questions during the discussion. Now, what we see in these fintech solutions is that there are 2 types of solutions that I think are currently being made possible through digitization. One is the digitization of the payment itself, which allows for less handling of physical cash, saving operational time, but also maybe decoupling the moment of delivery from the moment of payment. And that then also enables to instate short-term credit, which I name here as order-based trade credit. Now, in payment digitization, here again, this is sort of the happy flow that I said earlier. But what many people may not realize is that there is also a reverse flow, because once the cash, the physical cash, is being collected, it implies this cash needs to be transported back into the supply chain, back to the distribution center where it needs to be reconsolidated, counted again, leading, by the way, to lots of manual labor in terms of counting all of the cash, and then being transported using secure transport down to a bank. And maybe only 4 or 5 days after the cash is being received, it appears in the bank account of the supplier. So this also lengthens the order to cash cycle for these suppliers. That doesn't make it very attractive. Now, where digital payment has been growing, so this is in India with Paytm, in Peru with Yape, in China with Alipay, is essentially that at this point, there is immediately a digital payment, and at that point, immediately, the cash appears in the bank account of the supplier. So that delay is no longer there. There's also no risk in carrying the cash, and also the physical cost associated with handling the cash, which we, based on our studies, we did time and motion studies around this. We estimate this to be about 1/3 of the time of the stop. Just getting the cash, getting the change. This is a savings that being made in the operations, which will effectively reduce the cost of operation, and hence part of that will sift through to the cost of the consumer. Second way is that this can also be used to extend credit to the stores. And one way in which one supplier that we have been working with in Peru is doing this, that essentially they postpone payment one ordering cycle, which typically is a week later, where the payment is being made to the sales agent. Could actually also be in cash or digital. Now, the question that we were trying to address with this particular company is, well, what are the benefits of extending this cash, this credit, right? So I give a 1-week credit to these stores, and with this credit there is a risk associated, right? Because the stores may not pay back the credit. There's a relatively high turnover in these stores in Latin America. So the shopkeepers may default on this. So suppliers are generally quite reluctant in extending the credit. Now we analyzed with this distributor a large data set consisting of about 550,000 orders. This supplier, you see here a picture of the distribution. They were selling and supplying paper products. Think of Kimberly-Clark type of products, toilet paper, household paper, kitchen paper, these type of things. So we have 3 years worth of data, 20,000 stores being served by this particular distributor. And over this period of time, at any moment in time, 6,000 of those stores received the credit. And what we were estimating is trying to say, well, if a store took up such a credit, was there actually an increase in the subsequent sales? Because the idea is, well, these stores are somehow cash constrained. So if they have a credit, they essentially have a little bit more cash that they have. And they could use this cash to buy additional products, in which case the inventory in the store would be a little bit higher, and they could supply at higher service levels to the consumer and overall sell more. Well, it turns out actually there is a huge effect. So just 1 week of credit more than doubles the sales. So this really shows that these stores are massively cash constrained, and even a tiny bit of credit really helps a lot. We also show, this is the econometrics specification. We also look a bit more in detail into what is driving this. And here you see the different components. So a main effect is that there is a larger conversion rate. So this implies if the sales agent visits and the shopkeeper has been given credit, it is more likely that they will actually place an order. If they place an order, the order is actually larger. And for all of the orders that they place, they also have a larger number of categories and a larger number of SKUs of different products, which is particularly what commercial teams would like, because it means also product variety is increasing, and this generally is believed to actually increase sales, right? Now, if this sales increase is there, you can then take this back and do a trade-off with the additional risk that the shopkeepers face in terms of default. And you see over here a little curve, which we computed through simulation, where we say, well, suppose there's a cost of financing of 4%. There's a gross margin of 25% that the supplier may have. You essentially see that the weekly, notice is the weekly default probability, right? So can be very, very high. So this would imply 1 in 7 stores would just default every week, and then I'm just still breaking even. So this is really a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer that suppliers should extend this credit. This is without charging an interest rate to the shopkeeper, which we actually advocate. We say the benefits are so big, there should not be any hurdles for the shopkeeper to make them adopt this. You could say, well, I charge a bit more. This shifts the curve a bit, but as you see, there's not a major difference. If you're interested in this, take now a QR code scan, and this is the full paper where we outline all of the details. I realize I'm running already a little bit late, but I have one more example, right? And this is around digitization. So in general, we see there is an increasing interest to digitize nanostore operations. And this could happen with companies in the startup scene or scale-up scene. Tiendapago is a company in Mexico that provides trade credits. Wasoko is actually the company that just merged with MaxApp. They digitized the ordering process of shopkeepers. Governments sometimes help out. There's a very big program in China that helps, in particular, these nano stores in rural areas. Tech companies like Alibaba or Amazon, they have discovered this channel, either through providing services like Alibaba, they provide a B2B delivery service for inventory replenishment. And Amazon, they have a big program that started in India that's currently, I think, in about 30 countries, where e-commerce deliveries for the last mile, they go through the nano stores rather than delivering them to the consumer, which brings additional revenue and traffic to the stores. And then there are consumer goods, packaged goods manufacturers like AB InBev. They developed their own B2B platform. And Arca Continental, which is one of the largest bottlers for Coca-Cola, they provide a point of sales system. So there are many of these examples around. And this is supported in many cases by manufacturers. They support these stores strategically because in that way they can better control the transactional terms. They can guarantee a larger presence of products in the market, and they can grow consumption at the base of the pyramid. We've been working with one of these manufacturers, actually none of the ones we mentioned, but I cannot disclose the name of the manufacturer. But they this was actually a manufacturer of consumer packaged goods, so food-related items. And they provided a system to the stores that enabled these stores to get additional digital business. And these incurred services like phone and data top-ups. So the store could make additional money by selling data credit. By enabling the store to take card payments, which allows them to also provide more services to middle-class consumers. Who may have access to card payments, and then the payment of services, where in particular in many countries, many developing countries, the payment of utilities goes through government offices or offices of the utility companies, and very often consumers pay these utilities in cash. This system allows these nano stores to actually take these payments in the nano store directly to then pay the utilities. Now, in addition, the manufacturer supports the use of the system by opening a bank account for the shopkeepers. So many of these shopkeepers are unbanked. This is in Latin America, by the way. This operation, and then they offer a cash collection service to convert any of the cash into float that they may have in the system. So if a consumer pays in cash for the data top-up, this leaves the shopkeeper with cash, and the manufacturer offers a service to actually collect this cash and convert this into float so that they can sell additional data top-ups. Now, what we did here is, again, an empirical analysis. So we had essentially data of the sales that this particular consumer goods manufacturer had of their products to the nano stores. So these were their original sales. So think of food items. Actually, this was in the bakery category. And then we had all of the transaction data on these digital services, right? And what we were interested in, out of these digital services, the shopkeeper generates additional income. Do they actually use this to have their store develop and buy more products, more bakery products at this supplier, such that overall value increases, right? We also had the store location data, so that allows us also to see if there were any cannibalization effects of neighboring stores. Data for 3 years. Yeah, so what we have is that, so think of this as a particular part of a city. And in a city, there are thousands of stores, and some of these stores, they have adopted this system. And we essentially look at this store and look at what's happening, how this store is doing relative to the neighboring stores. Yeah. Interestingly, we also had a number of organized convenience stores in the sample. So it also allows us to do some comparison with these convenience stores, which typically already offer these services. Now, what we find is that these stores that offer these digital services, they actually use a considerable part of this to increase their buy-in of traditional products. And we see here there is an increase of 17%. So think of this as an increase of 70% in the business, right? This is quite substantial in growing their business. And this relates to more sales. These are perishable products, so there's also some more returns, but also they buy products at a higher price. So that means also more luxury products as part of their assortment. So that means the stores are really upgrading as a consequence of being able to have these digital services and also have a larger assortment. And we can also see that this effect is persistent over time. So imagine this graph as over here in the middle. This is the treatment. So when the digital service was introduced, this is the normalized sales prior to the introduction of the digital service. And then you see over here actually an increasing effect size, which implies that over time, this shop really becomes more economically wealthy. They become better off, their business becomes better. So digitization and adding these digital services really helps in making these shops more competitive. So these are just 2 examples. As you see here, this is a quick overview. We've done optimization type of work, empirical estimations, work in the lab, field experiments on a variety of different topics. These are the studies actually that we already completed, either published or are available online. These are the studies we are currently conducting or being or about to be finished. We started a lot of our work in Latin America, but we have been moving into Africa. We currently have 2 projects. Well, one project completed in Morocco, another project running in Morocco, and a project running in Kenya. If any of you are in this business, either as a consumer goods manufacturer or as a startup, we are more than interested to get in touch. And I'm very curious also to learn more about the Egyptian environment. Sorry for running 5 minutes over time, Ali, but I hope it was engaging. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you said that they have higher margins, right?
Yeah.
The buyers. So does that mean that they actually, the nano stores would offer the same product at a higher price?
So I think there are multiple effects at play here. So one is generally in the nano store, the product per unit, let's call this per kilogram or per unit, will be more expensive than in a supermarket.
Yes.
And that is because they're sold in smaller quantities. So that is an effect, right?
No, I'm saying the same thing, the same size, same everything.
If it's same size, generally the price differences are barely there. That's not what we're seeing. But in many cases, the very small size packages, suppliers will choose to only supply this to the nanostore channel strategically, because this is what these consumers are doing.
Yes.
What I think is also further driving why these manufacturers are making more money is an issue of negotiating power, right? So in the organized channel, actually a very big part of the margin ends up at the retailer. So at the Carrefour or the Tesco or the Walmart or whoever is there, they are actually the powerful player in the channel and they eat up the margin. In this channel, more of the margin stays with the supplier, but this also encourages them to strategically invest in this nanostore channel to make sure this channel, can thrive. Yeah.
Part of the investment, I see for Egypt, for example, especially CPG consumers, they either have smaller packs, all together a different product that are cheaper or more value.
Yeah, could be. So I think so. I don't know the Egypt situation, right? But in many countries, what we see is that, let's say, for the international brands, they may offer smaller packages. So, for instance, I saw in Morocco, rather than a 33 milliliter Coke can, I saw a 20 milliliter can.
Yes.
These type of adjustments to make the price point also more accessible for consumers at the bottom of the pyramid. In India, there are more extreme cases where, for instance, you also get single serve laundry packs. I don't know if they are also in Egypt. I have not.
That's the same thing. It's the same thing. They cannot put too much money in a big pack of Tide or Persil, for example.
Yes, it's too much. Yeah. What may also happen, and I've seen this also in many places, is that the shopkeeper may still buy a large pack, but just do the scoops themselves.
They sell it by the grams or the kilograms.
Yes. Yeah.
They do that not just for the detergents. They use this for sanitary packs.
Yes.
For Pampers.
Yeah.
They sell it by the piece.
Yeah, but also for rice, for cooking oil, etc. Right? Yeah.
Right.
This is also how the shopkeeper makes money, right? Because that's there.
Absolutely.
Very often, this is also linked to informal credit that the shopkeeper provides to the consumer, because consumers may also be short of cash, so they get delayed payments, right? Because the shopkeeper knows the consumer knows, well, you get your pay slip end of the week, so pay later. Yeah.
But that tends to happen when you have a very strong social community net.
Yeah.
So everybody knows each other's.
Yeah.
Then I will wait until the end of the week to get.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I can't see much, and some of the photos you've shown or the clips, is that there isn't a really last mile issue. And I'm sure there is an issue, it could be an issue in Morocco, in Kenya, for example, in Kibera, one of the major squatters. You cannot get there with a truck like that. You really have to have a small bike or a small motorcycle. Now, you don't see this because they tend to be slightly different than a mom and pop in a nice residential area. Small, yes, they have a cash constraints. There is an issue of whatever, but this is not because the way I've seen it in Egypt, the way they do it, they don't go there because I cannot get there. So the way I do this, there is always what they call a wholesaler, which is typically a store. It's really a big store.
Yeah.
Storage area. And then they sell to this guy. And then the little kiosks or little nano stores,
Yeah.
they will drive in the morning or walk in the morning and pick what they need and then bring it back.
Okay. And you would say also the big brands are doing this? Because in I would say virtually all of the countries, you sort of see the top 10, 15 largest brands, they still go directly. And then for the smaller brands, they may use this wholesaler type of structure. Because
Again, it depends. It
interest
depends on
in
the
going
last
there,
mile.
right?
Depends on the last mile issue. If there is a last mile issue, I'll drop it.
Yes, if they have to
I'm not
go
gonna
into
get it.
Kibera, it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the, or I'll have distributors who are basic person from the area with a little bit motorcycle with a
Yeah.
storage box behind, and then the guy
Yeah.
will do the distribution.
Yeah.
And they will give him a credit, whatever. They do those
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
There are all sort of those kind, and it's slightly different when you talk about suburban areas or rural areas.
Yes.
In some of the rural areas in Egypt, I've been told they do cross docking because they want to have a little truck, but they do it in a yard. They don't do it like, it's not like a Walmart kind of a thing. They do it in a little yard where they get the big trucks with different assortments, and then you have little trucks that's going to go around to the little nano stores
Yeah.
with the assortment that are required.
Yeah.
But again, when you look at the people doing this kind of things, you would never imagine that they are that sophisticated.
So I'm always impressed. So I've been on dozens of times, probably sitting on the truck with the driver and trying to understand what's happening. I'm always amazed at what these guys do. Also, if you look at the number of stores that they're able to visit per hour, these are numbers that even parcel delivery companies over here would have difficulty with, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's a highly sophisticated operation. I remember now talking about the yard, right? I remember at some point, I think it was in Colombia or so, I was on the truck, and in the distribution center, they would get the full case packs. And they then went around the corner, they parked the truck, they unloaded everything again, and then started mixing the case packs, organizing this by destination. Because they say, well, then the remainder is much more efficient. So, yeah.
It's cross-docking. It's cross-docking.
Yes.
It's really breaking bulk.
Yeah.
Breaking bulk without keeping it in inventory.
Yeah.
The issue of e-wallet, it's e-payments and stuff like that, it's catching up in Egypt. But again, it tends to be more like Vodafone kind of a support, be the Vodafone kind of an e-wallet.
Yeah, like M-Pesa.
Yes, something like that. It's not really a fintech kind of will. And again, it's just because of the maturity of the market. Listen, I would want to leave some space to others to sort of ask questions. So I'm going to open the floor for questions. So if you have a question, please just raise your hand, and will unmute you, and you can sort of show yourself and ask the question. Oh boy, we must have done a very good job in presentation, so there is no questions. Huh? Okay, we can keep the discussions going until we get someone to sort of warm up and ask questions. You said there is a retail Egyptian retail chain that's going to Morocco.
Yes, I'm trying to remember the name. Was it Karim? There is no, it's small convenience stores, and apparently they're very big in Egypt, and they are moving into Morocco.
Interesting.
You're not familiar with them?
No.
It's convenience stores. I would describe them as convenience stores. Trying to remember.
There's something called Metro.
No, 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 no.
not Metro.
Uh,
Okay, interesting. Maxab is actually also operating in Latin America and Africa.
no, not that I know. No, I think they're only in North Africa, as far as I know.
So Morocco.
Yeah, they are in Morocco, but not so big. And I
Okay.
understand over there they're mainly targeting the restaurants more than the stores. There is a company similar to Maxep, similar concept called Chari in Morocco, which is a Morocco-based company. I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Hello.
Cazion. Cazion.
Ah, okay.
You know
Okay.
them?
I know them, but they usually are not in, they tend to be in smaller townships in Egypt.
Okay. Yeah, they say here's a
I,
discount
I
grocery
haven't,
retail.
in the part of Cairo that I live in, I don't see them around,
Okay.
but I know that they are in smaller cities. But
Yes.
those are not small shops. Those are reasonably mid-sized shops. They're not as big as Carrefour, but they're not a small mom and
Yeah,
pop
I haven't
shop.
been inside, so I'll be back in Casablanca next month. So I'm intending to be inside and have a look. Yeah.
Okay, now tell me what is impressions about the differences. I mean, when you think in terms of Latin America, they have squatters, right? In some countries,
They have what?
informal settlements, squatters,
Uh,
like
yes.
Kibera in Kenya.
Yeah. Like slums. Yes.
Yeah.
So yes. So what you see in Latin America is that there is a huge disparity in income.
Yes.
Find in the cities there are very wealthy areas, very wealthy areas. Over there, a lot of this traditional channel they are disappearing just because the real estate cost is too high. And then on the fringes of the city, you see these essentially slums developing, which are largely people that are migrating from the countryside into the cities and then building informal housing. Um, the nano stores that you see in Latin America, they are in all of the areas except the really expensive areas, down to the slums. And if you're in the slums, the relative density of stores is actually quite high. So
Okay.
there we see roughly for every 50 people in the population, there is a store. So to, let's say, middle class, this may go up to every 100 or every 200 people.
Okay.
Store. Now, there are many challenges by going into the slums. Many manufacturers, they still go into the slums because, so Kibera, I've not been into Kibera, but I saw it from the side.
Yeah.
There it's even impossible to get in with a small vehicle, right? So you have to go motorcycle or cart or something.
Yes, exactly.
The density is typically a little bit less, but sometimes it is against the hill, right? Like in Rio de Janeiro, there are these favelas, they call
The
them there.
favelas, yeah.
There, essentially, the local communities, they take care of the distribution and transportation.
Mhm.
I'm co-advising one PhD student over there, and he does all of his work in these favelas. It's highly interesting. It's very difficult community because essentially those communities are completely gang controlled. So
Yes,
uh,
yes. It's interesting. We used to do routing in Brazil, and they actually load the trucks in a way that they load the expensive materials first. They offload the expensive materials first before they getting into those
yes,
risky areas.
yes,
Amazing.
yeah. I think that's
More
one. The other
risk-based.
one is that you don't want to have a lot of cash also on board when you go in there. And they
That's
may
not
have
a
to
big deal.
pay protection money also if they
That's
go in.
not a big deal nowadays because you could just pay by phone. You can just pay by phone. I have questions. I mean, lots of
Yeah.
people. I'm gonna ask Carl first and then Minna. Carl, please unmute yourself. and
Hi.
show yourself.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for your time, and for kind of elaborating on the idea of e-payments. I think it's something towards the future, and I wanted like more of an elaboration on that, because we find now that between us as students, even we use it for uh, everyday transactions such as InstaPay as an app. So how do you think e-payments can be a solution for supply chains? And then how do you think these solutions could apply to the Egyptian context?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to fill me in on the Egyptian context, right? But let me.
Morocco is very similar to Egypt.
Okay, okay.
So
Yeah,
just refer
uh,
to the Moroccan case and we'll pick it up.
Okay. I think so. If you look at this supply chain, essentially, you can think of the cash itself also as physical goods that needs to be transported, right? So the moment that I take that away, I take away the handling of the cash, which typically leads to delays. So if I'm at the shop, when I need to get a payment in cash done as a supplier, I mean now, as a supplier, this implies I need to count the money, I need to have change, etc. So there's just time associated with that. Then I need to carry the cash back on my vehicle back to the distribution center. This associates typically a risk because there could be potential risk of robbery. Then at the distribution center, I need to reconsolidate my cash. So again, I need to count everything because the delivery driver needs to show that he brings in all of the cash which he is supposed to bring in.
Yeah, that takes time.
Counting. And then there is a delay until it reaches the bank account. So that's basically 4 or 5 days in the order to cash cycle. So all of that just related to the physical handling relates to cost that can be taken out, which directly has operational benefits. Then I think the second benefit is there you decouple the moment of delivery from the moment of payment. And that allows you then to start playing with credit. So for instance, in the Kenya situation, we discussed with one supplier that was applying a 12-hour credit. So over there, particularly in the poor neighborhoods in Nairobi, the stores are so short of cash that their cash cycle is less than 24 hours. So essentially, what they buy in the morning from the supplier, they sell during the day, and then they may have enough money in the evening to essentially pay back the supplier. So if you give a 12-hour credit, that actually allows this shopkeeper to buy their inventory and then repay. But if you have to go back in person a second time during the day, the whole business case is gone. So electronic payment will allow this type of credit there. So that's all directly in operations. I think also commercially there are many more opportunities, right? Because it means you have lots of additional data you have access to, and that can be leveraged. I showed earlier in the example of the digital services that shopkeepers, just by offering the digital services itself, they can raise additional revenue. And all of this is related to digitalization of cash transactions. So I think, there are many opportunities. Essentially, I don't know if this is part of an operations course, right? But if you think of operations and any friction in operations that's related to physical cash, a lot can be taken out by moving to digital payments.
Yes.
Where there is, can I say one more thing? Where there is often a challenge in many developing countries is that you see that the people that are adopting the digital payments are typically middle class and up, and people at the bottom of the pyramid have more difficult access to it. That could be because it has to be linked to a bank account and people may not be banked. It could also be if you have very little cash, and I need to essentially have both physical cash and I need to have the float in my digital wallet. Essentially, I'm spreading my cash over 2 sources. This essentially makes my cash handling even more complex. So, and I saw this in Kenya, for instance. In Kenya, M-Pesa has been there now for almost 20 years, but there's still quite some challenges for poor people in really dealing with this. So, for instance, they told me that the average number of transactions between a cash in and cash out, so they have this cash in, cash out, so transition between float and cash, is only just over 2. So that means if cash is converted to float, there are only on average, I think it was 2.1 or so digital payments before it's taken out again. So, and that's driven by the fact that I essentially now have 2 currencies, of which I both have very little. So for people at the bottom of the pyramid, this is not so trivial unless you really get to a situation where the far majority of the payments are all digital, because then you don't need your physical cash anymore. And that's, I think the transition is still a challenge for consumers at the base of the pyramid.
I've seen some philanthropy organizations. They ask the recipients of the grants to have e-wallets.
Yeah.
It's much easier for them to distribute.
Yeah.
And I think eventually those guys would actually could use this to sort of pay using a Vodafone kind of an e-wallet.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's very similar to M-Pesa, but maybe it's an earlier stage.
Yeah, so it could be related because Vodafone is a minority shareholder in Safaricom, and Safaricom owns M-Pesa. So I know Vodafone has been promoting M-Pesa or technology based on M-Pesa in other countries. Because the strength of M-Pesa is you don't necessarily need a smartphone. I can also do this with a block phone. Yeah.
Yes. Let me take a question from Menna.
Thank
Menna,
you.
please unmute yourself. Thank you, Carl.
Firstly, I want to thank you for this insightful talk because I feel like it's really applicable to the Egyptian market because we have many like nano stores here that can benefit from the opportunities that we talked about. And so my question was, what are the main challenges that these nano stores might face in the process of digitizing their operations and their payments? But I know you tackled it briefly. So how do you think we could solve this issue and like encourage more like nano stores to further capitalize on this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you know, in the analysis that we try to do, I think in almost all of the analysis we show that this digitization also brings a huge benefit for the suppliers that supply to these stores. And my line of reasoning there is that I feel the suppliers have a responsibility to take away the initial cost of doing this, because you will still need a smartphone. This may not be there. You need data access. In some countries, I don't know the situation in Egypt, but data access is relatively expensive. So with the type of research that we try to do is we're trying to say, well, there are so many benefits that fall to the supplier that I think suppliers have a responsibility to somehow take away these financial barriers of shopkeepers. But financial barriers are one. I think a second one, and I don't know to what extent that's the case in Egypt, but in many countries, these shopkeepers, they are part of the informal economy. To say this more directly, they don't pay taxes. And that many of these shopkeepers, they are afraid when they start to digitize that many more of their transactions become also traceable by the government and the tax authorities. And that is, in quite a few countries, a barrier to digitization, because shopkeepers see this as a threat that they may need to start to pay taxes or more taxes. We've done some research around this in terms of technology acceptance. And what is interesting is that these shopkeepers, they are smart businessmen. If they understand that the benefits that they get from digitization are more than the additional taxes that they may need to pay, they're actually happy to join the more formal economy. And with our research, what we try to show is that these benefits are really very big. And we hope this is a tool. I've held presentations based on our research, also, for instance, for the Inter-American Development Bank, and for public authorities in a number of countries, where I think it makes much more sense for governments that are trying in many ways to formalize these stores, that it is much better to show them the carrot of digitization than to try and threaten them with penalties of non-payment, because I think all this, it's very difficult to enforce otherwise, right? So I think that these two are important barriers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jan, would you allow me to take a last question from Karim? We're gonna be
Sure. Yeah.
Karim, please go ahead and
Okay, so I wanted to ask about how later in the video, later in the presentation, how did it happen in Morocco? Like, how did you manage to change the culture regarding financial receptibility towards e-payment? Like what local infrastructures can financial institutions work with to change the literacy of those people, and how receptive were they to this?
Yeah, we have not done that work in Morocco around digital payments. Actually, in Morocco, still digital payments are more or less fully absent. There are a number of players that are now trying to introduce, but I think the most successful cases for transformation to digital payments, they are India and Brazil. And the cases are interesting because what happened there is that the central bank of initially India, but later Brazil did the same thing. They established a mandatory open standard for digital payments. And any wallet operator that is in the market needs to comply with this standard. And this has a very big advantage because this implies that there are multiple companies that essentially are offering this service, and the services have to be interoperable. Now, why is this important? Because this drives down transaction cost for the consumer. One of the challenges of M-Pesa in Kenya, for instance, is that M-Pesa nearly has a monopoly, and as a consequence, they charge relatively high transaction costs. If you have many small payments, you don't want high transaction costs. And in India and in Brazil, what has happened is that there are actually dozens of digital wallets. They are all interchangeable. So maybe to give another example where it did not work is in Vietnam. There are also dozens of wallets, but they're not interoperable. So that means people are walking around with 3-4 cell phones because they have different wallets and they have to pay using different wallets in different places. Yeah, it doesn't work. In India and Brazil, the central bank mandatorily imposed interoperability and then created a market for competition, which reduced the transaction cost close to zero. And I think if the transaction cost is close to zero, the volume increases dramatically. And when the volume increases, everybody's better off.
Thank you.
Jan, thanks for your time. It's always a pleasure. And thank you everybody for staying with us until the end. And apologies for extending beyond the 8 o'clock.
That's okay. No worries.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So much. Thank you.